guys, welcome back to Linda's Pantry. And as you see in the title, the question is to store your canning jars with the ring on or the ring off. Did you hear that pop? Okay, this is a little bit of beef broth that's been in the fridge. When I opened it, the seal was good. And when I take things off the shelf, I immediately do this little center push on the metal button top lids. On the Tatler lids, I don't. As I'm picking it up, I push up with my thumb to see if it's still sealed. And that way, when I'm taking it out of the jar box, because it may be in the back, and sometimes I have to tip it, I know that if it's unsealed, I shouldn't tip it. And now, controversy is to leave the rings on or not. And it says on the box to not do it. And I'm going to confess that for many years I did, because I didn't know where to put these. Where do you put all your rings once you've got all your canning jars in? But I honestly, after my mom explained it to me, she said, you have temperature changes even within your house, and her analogy was great, and this is what I'm going to give you. This resealed in the refrigerator because the temperature changed from being room temperature when I used the beef bone broth, and then putting it back in the refrigerator, it sealed that lid back. And that's a false seal. It won't do that if your ring is not on. It won't suck that back down tight like that. So you won't get that suction that we just had. So hopefully you guys saw that. The other reason, okay, this is a brand new jar. I just took it out of an unopened case of jelly jars, and I'm gonna see if this has got a false seal. A lot of times you'll take this ring and you'll get a false seal, and this is not, it's on there. So that was sealed on there. That's a false seal, and that's from temperature change, from shipping, and going through all kinds of different conditions. And so that's why I don't leave the rings on anymore, and I haven't for a long time. The only time I leave rings on is if it's jelly and I know it's going to be moving quickly, because I have to dig out a ring to get it back on the shelf at work. So, and this jar right here is what spurred me on to do this discussion, because this is a jar of spinach that I did in May of last year, and I had a couple jars, and spinach shrinks down a lot. So when I do it this next time, I'm going to do 1.5 pint jars, because even though you par cook it and I follow the instructions in the ball book, you still get a lot of shrinkage. It's still really good. It's delicious, actually. It's my favorite. I take this as a snack, or I eat it for lunch. But when I went to pick this jar up, I did my normal, and look at that. That was not sealed. Now, it had been sealed. You can see the ridge in the rubber gasket, but and I always have to say, well, why didn't it seal? And look at my lid, see if I see anything. Nothing there. And, when you look inside this jar, it does not look like it's bad. Had this had a ring on, I probably would have not known, because it probably would have forced that to reseal, and I would have consumed something that could have had, dangerous bacteria already growing in that. Now, as soon as I realized that a couple days ago, I put it in my refrigerator so I could do this video for you. Your jars should be sealed. You should be able to pick them up by that. And I personally, every time I open a jar box, I go through and I check all the lids in my jar box, and I store them in those plastic jar boxes that Ball came out with. It keeps the light out. It keeps, they're earthquake proof pretty much. We take them down dirt roads in the back of our pickup or camper, and we've never even had a jar break. They might be cattywampus when we get there, but now I will put rings on to If we're gonna go camping, I put rings on my jars to go in the jar box, and that's a temporary thing. But I'll tell you what I've done is I go through my rings about once a year. I've got a big 5-gallon bucket full, and it's always overflowing, and now's the time. I go through my 5-gallon bucket of rings, and I get rid of any of them that look like they've oxidized, because some of them a few years ago, the finish would start coming off, or any of them that rusted. I just inspect them all and toss. And I only really have to keep a fraction of what I actually have in jars, because I'm never going to put all the rings back on those jars. I only need them for canning sessions, if you will. So theoretically, you really only need to keep a few dozen around, not 10 or 12 dozen. So that's how I solved that problem, and I started doing that about 4 or 5 years ago, because I would store all those rings. I just couldn't bear to get rid of them. You weren't supposed to, and yeah, it's a clutter. So I don't keep them all now. If you guys want to see what kind of rings I would keep on hand opposed to the ones that I would go out the door, you know, you can leave a comment in the comment section. I will leave a link to the jar boxes though. They truly have been a great asset in my extended pantry room, and I can stack them on top of each other. You can't stack, you're not supposed to store your jars stacked. That's a big no-no too. That also creates a false seal because it's weighted down and that can't release. So, and this spinach, who knows how long it's been unsealed, it doesn't smell bad at all. I mean, you could very well be consuming something that's really bad for you, not knowing how long it's been like that. So I hope this helps. I hope it encourages you to go ahead and go through some of your lids. Donate them to somebody. You could even donate them to the Goodwill, because oftentimes you'll see jars for sale, but they don't have any rings. So put your rings in the donation bin and keep enough to do, you know, 3 or 4 dozen maybe canning sessions. And like when we go camping, I might take 2 dozen jars with me, so I might need a dozen of each size to go. So if I keep a dozen of each size and then I have a dozen of each size here at the house, that takes up a whole lot less room than storing all those canning lids or rings. And I can bless somebody else with them because they're expensive to buy. And you can buy the little packs of metal lids pretty inexpensively, and then you don't have to worry, because if you have to buy the rings too, it can get a little costly. So I hope that this helps you. I keep seeing people that are storing their jars with lids on, and I really think unless you're moving them around, or unless, you know, they're gonna go, like, you know, I sell my jellies at work, I just don't think it's a good idea. And they put it on the box because it's not a good idea. And false seals. I mean, if it false seals before it's ever been canned, what's to say this won't, or this won't, or that won't? So anyways, I hope it inspires you to go ahead and get canning, because we've got a canning session coming up here. I'm going to be canning some turkey. I bought turkeys on sale, and I had this big one. We're going to have a big turkey dinner, and then I'm going to can up the rest of it. Canned turkey is delicious, and so is canned chicken. As long as you par cook everything, all your meats are really, really good. I do find that I am going to do an experiment, because I pulled out some ground turkey that I canned, and I used a chicken broth or chicken bouillon I used in the canning process as the liquid after I cooked the turkey. And that came out and held its texture. I couldn't tell that I didn't just brown it up. So I'm going to try that with my ground beef, because I've done ground beef with water. Sorry, my dog's taking a drink every time I turn the camera on. I've done it with water, and your ground beef gets really soft. Sage. And I also do a dry canning method where you don't put water in there, you fully cook it and can it. That works fantastic. But I am going to try it with the broth, because I like the fact that the meat isn't sitting in the airspace inside the jar. So guys, if there's anything you'd like to see, whether it be questions that you have, if I can answer them, I would certainly like to try. If I can't, I'll resource someone for you to go talk to, or a book for you to resource. Please, whenever you're canning, use a reputable resource online, or get yourself a bulk canning book. There's lots of books out there that are really good, and sometimes Grandma's way wasn't the best way, but in the canning jar rings, it really is. You need to stick to it instead of risking your family's health with something nasty in a jar. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this away. The spinach anyway. I'm going to throw the spinach away and scrub this up. I will mark this lid, and that will tell me that this ring has had a fail. If it fails me again, and these were all sealed when I put them in there, if it fails me again, this ring gets tossed and I start with a new one. Because you use them about every 10 canning sessions, you'll need to replace your rings. It's really hard to keep track until you have a fail. I have very few fails though. No more with Tatler than I do with a button top. I mean, it might be 2 a year, and but I also can probably 300 to 500 jars of food a year. So to me, that's pretty small. All right, guys. I can't wait to see you next time for another delicious recipe. I hope you go check the links below. And as always, look forward to another canning session, and or you never know what I might be doing. All right, bye.